life insurance is crazy cheap when you're a healthy 21, 22, or frankly, even a healthy 30-year-old. It is wildly affordable. And it's a powerful tool for us because we can protect equity, right? So someday, if Brian were to pass away, or if Brian were to want to retire, we've got a tool there that we've funded a buyout mechanism already. So when that point in time comes and Brian wants to sell shares, we already have a plan in place. We've got a tool in place now that helps us achieve those goals. Which, once again, in my opinion, the biggest part there is it eliminates uncertainty. We have a plan, right? So Brian doesn't have to sit there, or frankly, I don't have to sit there and wonder, what am I going to do when my sons want to come back, right? How are we going to handle this? That's taken care of, and it gives them a lot of clarity. So me at 30, I know what my future more or less holds from an estate and equity position, right? So that's been really beneficial, once again, because when we have these discussions as a family, as Jorgensen Land and Cattle, and questions come up, what's really, really great is we can almost always point back to a partnership agreement or a buy-sell agreement or a guiding document around estate planning, and it removes the emotion. It's a discussion about, okay, this is what we've decided on, guys. How are we going to make that happen? It's not, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? We've already figured those things out, and it makes those discussions a lot easier. You know, another thing that has become relevant in our family and our business is, as we've grown and as we've transitioned from, first, second to third, and now our next transition really will be getting someone from the 5th generation involved, is that family is growing, right? It started with 1 person, then it was 2, then it was 4. And when you go to the 5th, I mean, you're looking at 7 or 8 people potentially getting involved. And so as we think about that, a couple of the discussions our families had is, we're lucky in that we have a large business, and in almost all cases can incorporate those individuals as labor in the least, right? But there has to be a differentiation between labor and management. And not only that, but I think you have to tell yourself that just because I'm a family member doesn't mean I'm entitled to management or entitled to anything, right? If you're going to come back and be an owner and a manager in Jorgensen Land and Cattle, we want that individual to bring value, to bring a skill set that either doesn't exist or is better than what we have today, right? Because I look at it, with my 4 sons, for example, they may all want to come back, but we don't need 4 individuals that all like to work in the shop and want to be owners of the business, and that's where they want to focus their time. That doesn't make sense as a business case. And so one of the things that I've had to tell myself internally is just be prepared that, management is not for everyone. And we've focused on that in a big way at Jorgensen Land and Cattle, right? We're here. This business is in our hands. This equity is in our hands. And our best place to be to manage that and treat it right is management, right? And I've heard people say that, are you making the $10 decisions? Are you making the $100 decisions? Are you making the $1,000 decisions or larger? Holders of that equity need to be making those large decisions, the $10,000, the $100,000, the $1 million decisions. And you can't get mired in the day-to-day stuff. It's all important, right? It has to be done. And we're lucky in that we've got a large enough business that we've got teams of people that handle the operational stuff. But you cannot forget about, like Brian said, the 30,000-foot view things. And we need people in that room, in that ownership group, that are qualified and can handle those 30,000-foot view things. So, those are my comments. Dad hit a lot of stuff. As far as estate planning for myself personally, we're in the process of setting those things up on a personal side. The business side stuff is taken care of. Jorgensen Land and Cattle stuff, we've got a plan. Personally, at 30 years old, we've got nothing, major in place. We've got what is necessary in place. And I mean, at that age, things will change over time. And I think Alan will hit on that. Things change over time. So as long as you got a minimum level of protection in place to ensure that your family's taken care of, that's the stage that we're at today.
That's great. Thank you, Nick, for sharing that. It's great. I'm sure our viewers have appreciated too, hearing from the younger generation that is transitioning in. And I think your comments about having some guidelines for coming into the operation as well as, you know, that transition. I think that's critically important. And again, it's a form of communication. And as I said earlier, we know that there's some basic fundamental things that need to be done. And those are some of the things. And then, you know, your discussions leading up to it and all of that, everybody's going to be somewhat different. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. Alan, do you want to share your experiences?
I don't know. My mind's kind of mush right now after listening to you.
That's what I feel like too.
I love
great
it.
information.
I hope what people, a key word, I hope they pick up out of these three, it's called leadership. These three are actively leading their families, their operations through this process. And when you think about estate planning and transition, it's all about leadership, guys. And that's a choice. Either you can or you don't have to. It's a choice we make. And we just heard from three individuals who are leading their families. And with leadership comes a lot of good things, because you know what? We're impacted. And one of the things I talk about, and I've kind of coined the word, the impacts of birth on agriculture. And we said family, but it's really the impact of birth, okay? And if you can see within your children the strengths that they have and play to those strengths as they're developing the operation and growing the operation, good things come out of that. But so many times birth tends to get the best of us, because that becomes the pool of people that we're focused on. And we're not seeing the skills, we're not seeing the opportunities, and it's just bogging a lot of things down. I was actually in a meeting the other night where we actually, and this is very rare, where we had to let a child go. And if that doesn't make you silent, it does. That was very, very difficult, but it needed to happen. And so the impact of birth, the only reason a child was in that position was because of birth. All right. And so just keep that word in mind, because there's a lot of things going on. If we can look at our children for the strengths, the skills, the needs of the business, the needs of the family, we're now heading down a path to get us to a better place. I think what you heard from the three before, and I'm going to continue to refer back to the three because there was a lot of good information. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of tools. In my role, I don't sell life insurance. I don't sell investments. I have no lending authority. I'm an employee of First Dakota National Bank. And so it's a consulting role. When people hire me in, the checks go to the bank because I'm an employee of the bank. But I'm totally focused on the operation, listening, and so previously listening to the three speak, I spend a lot of time listening, trying to figure out what are the key points we're talking about so I can be solution driven. Then how do we discover the solution? Not me just telling people what they need to do, because they found by helping people discovering the right path, it will stick. If it's just me telling people what to do, it may or may not, because it has to be your solution to fit your family in the situation you're going through. Some other things I want to leave time for questions is exit planning. We talk about bringing people into the business, but there's very little exit planning in agriculture that's been done. So if people wish to get out, they wish to get out down the road, and you don't think about that when you're 27, 26, 24, about that day that's coming. But I have found when people can't get out of something that they want to get out of, you're now captive. And that's creating a lot of problems. It's creating a lot of problems, guys. And that's something we really need to focus on. And it's never too late to start talking about that conversation. But as people are coming into the operation, younger generation, that should be an active discussion. Obviously, we got to see if the operation can afford it and everything else. But at least let's make sure we're having those kinds of conversations. Not just about in case something happened to somebody. I mean, on the death side, at some point, people may want to get out of the operational side of the business. And there's two words that come up too. People tend to want the responsibility of the decision making. I mean, we all do, right? But you have to have the accountability of the debt of the business too. You can't have one without the other. They go hand in hand. So collectively, how do we work through those two words at the same time? Every operation is going through a journey from simple to more complex. I mentioned earlier that I'm a first generation operation. I started in 1992. My transition to Blake, who runs our operation, is fairly simple. You have 2 people to 2 people. When I get called into operations, generally we have a spread going on. And I say the spread is when you have people, more people involved. And I tell you, when you start with the 2 to the, or say 1 couple to 2 couples, there's some things we need to get in place before we go to the next spread, because now we have cousins working with cousins. All right. It's just a general pathway forward. And so we need to be having certain conversations about preparing for that next level of the spread, not just think it'll work out. We have to prepare for the future. Jimmy V said it best, Jimmy Valvano. You can go to his SB speech in 1993. And this is my transition formula that I have found has been consistent and worked with every operation that I work with on the transition side. He said, if you want to know where you're going, you have to understand who you are today. And to understand who you are today, you have to know where you came from. And so I'll spend a lot of time in the beginning phases of a transition project. We're talking about the past, because the past is a known, guys. Yesterday is now a known, tomorrow is an unknown. We can try to manage through it and think we have the plan, but we really don't know what's going to happen until we get through the day. It's important to have planning and scheduling. But I have found every decision about people looking at how they're going to transition their operation in the future, it's already a known in the past. It's based on the experiences of the past. We're tweaking what they've been through, whether they like it or not. We're tweaking the past, which discovers the future. And I know that sounds complicated and everything else, but there's a lot of past that a lot of the younger generation never heard. But I will tell you, it's impacting the decision-making of the parents today. The 80s, if there was a bankruptcy in the past, it left a scar that's impacting those people for the rest of their life and how they approach a lot of different things. I'm just saying the past is very, very important, and it'll feel like a plow as we're working through that. And then you move from one phase to the other, and it's pretty seamless, but it's critical. And so that's just a heads up. People are going to work in their own transition process. Don't minimize the importance of the past. It's critical because it's a known. I think everybody's looking for success for every one of our children. We have 3 children, Pam and I do too. We're looking for success for all 3 of them. It's going to be different because of the journeys that they've taken, right? But we're looking for success for all of them. And I've found that consistent within every family member I've ever worked with. But here's the common question I get from everybody when I get that first call. And I work with farmers and ranchers in that geography that do not have a lending relationship with First Dakota. Again, it was designed that way, so every driveway is an option. But they'll say, where do we start? Whether we're talking about estate planning, whether we're talking about transition, where do we begin? My answer is very common with everybody. Coffee. Let's just start talking. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. If you're taking the time and we're having the conversations, they're so full of, in many cases, the pain or the opportunities or whatever, it just starts to come out. And then we can begin to organize those thoughts and we begin to figure out what is the pathway forward to making some of this happen. The leadership you heard today from these 3 is not there in every operation. Okay? It's not that they don't want to, it's just not there. The experiences of the past, many have never worked off farm or been exposed to a board like Bob talked, in Bob's background, just never been exposed. And so we have to help people through this process.